Every breath burned as I carried another tray of coffee cups across the sterile linoleum floor of St. Mary's Hospital cafeteria. The fluorescent lights overhead cast an unforgiving glare that made my already pale skin look ghostly, and the persistent ache in my lower back reminded me of the secret I'd been hiding for months. I touched my stomach instinctively, the slight curve still barely noticeable beneath my loose uniform, but growing stronger each day. 2 years. 2 years since Rebecca Carter had supposedly died in that car accident, since the FBI had given me a new identity, a new life. Sarah Mitchell now, working minimum wage at a hospital cafeteria, living in a cramped studio apartment 3 blocks away. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd ended up back in a hospital, just on the other side of the medical world I once knew. The smell of disinfectant mixed with burnt coffee and reheated food created an atmosphere of institutional despair. I'd grown accustomed to it, along with the constant hum of conversations from medical staff, grabbing quick meals between shifts, the beeping of monitors echoing from distant corridors, and the occasional announcement over the intercom system. My supervisor, Margaret, appeared beside me with her usual scowl. She was a heavy-set woman in her 50s who seemed to take personal offense at any sign of weakness or fatigue. "Sarah, table 12 needs clearing, and the VIP dining room upstairs needs service in 20 minutes. Important guests today." I nodded, swallowing the wave of nausea that had become my constant companion. "Of course, Margaret." The VIP dining room was on the hospital's top floor, reserved for board members, major donors, and other influential figures who preferred privacy during their visits. I'd only been up there a handful of times, always nervous about the elevated expectations and the way the well-dressed visitors looked right through me as if I were part of the furniture. As I prepared the service cart, my hands trembled slightly. The pregnancy was making everything harder. My ankles swelled by the end of each shift, my energy levels had plummeted, and the morning sickness that struck at all hours of the day made it difficult to keep food down. I couldn't afford to lose this job. Without insurance, without any safety net, this position was all that stood between me and complete destitution. The elevator ride to the top floor felt longer than usual. I stared at my reflection in the polished steel doors, barely recognizing the woman looking back. My once vibrant auburn hair had been dyed a mousy brown and pulled back in a simple ponytail. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, and the weight loss from stress and poor nutrition made my cheekbones more pronounced. I looked like a ghost of my former self, which, I supposed, was exactly the point. The VIP dining room was elegant in a way that felt foreign after months of institutional surroundings. Rich mahogany paneling, soft lighting from crystal chandeliers, and windows overlooking the city skyline. Fresh flowers on each table, real silverware instead of plastic, cloth napkins instead of paper. It was a reminder of a world I'd once belonged to, now forever out of reach. 3 men sat at the corner table, their conversation stopping abruptly as I entered. They were clearly not hospital staff. Expensive suits, confident postures, the kind of presence that commanded attention and respect. I kept my eyes down as I approached with the coffee service, my training from the FBI's witness protection program, screaming at me to remain invisible, unremarkable. "Gentlemen, your coffee," I said quietly, beginning to pour from the silver pot. That's when I heard it. The voice that had haunted my dreams for 2 years, rich and deep with just a hint of an Italian accent that became more pronounced when he was angry or passionate. The hospital's recent security upgrades have been impressive, but there are still vulnerabilities that concern me. My hand froze, the coffee pot suspended mid-pour. I knew that voice better than my own heartbeat. I'd heard it whisper my name in the darkness, heard it command respect from dangerous men, heard it promise things that both thrilled and terrified me. Roman Moretti. Time seemed to slow as I completed pouring the coffee, my movements automatic despite the chaos erupting in my mind. He couldn't be here. This was impossible. The FBI had assured me that my death had been convincing, that Roman would never think to look for me in a place like this. But there he was, not 3 feet away from me, discussing hospital security with what I could only assume were board members. His dark hair was shorter than I remembered, but still perfectly styled. His profile was exactly as I'd memorized it during those stolen nights together. The strong jaw, the aristocratic nose, the way his eyes seemed to take in everything while revealing nothing. I moved to pour coffee for the second man, desperate to finish and escape before Roman looked up, before he recognized me. But my hands were shaking now, really shaking, and coffee splashed onto the pristine white tablecloth. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, reaching for a napkin. "No harm done," the board member said kindly, but I could feel the shift in attention, the way all three men were now looking at me instead of continuing their conversation. I dabbed at the spill, my heart pounding so hard I was certain they could hear it. "Just finish and go," I told myself. "Just finish and—" Rebecca. The name hit me like a physical blow. Not Sarah, my carefully constructed new identity. Rebecca. My real name, spoken in a voice I'd never forgotten, with a tone of shock and something else. Something dangerous. I looked up despite every instinct screaming at me not to, and found myself staring directly into Roman Moretti's dark eyes. Eyes that had seen too much, done too much, eyes that had once looked at me with a passion that had made me forget every warning about the kind of man he was. For a moment, neither of us moved. The other two men at the table faded into background noise as Roman and I stared at each other across a chasm of 2 years and a lifetime of lies. I saw the moment recognition fully hit him, saw his expression shift from shock to something darker, more complex. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Roman said, never taking his eyes off me. "It seems I need to have a private conversation with our server." The way he said server made it clear he knew exactly who I was, what I'd been hiding. One of the board members started to protest, but something in Roman's tone made him think better of it. "Of course, Mr. Moretti. We'll reconvene this afternoon." They gathered their papers and left with the efficiency of men who knew better than to question Roman Moretti when he'd made a decision. Which left me alone with the most dangerous man I'd ever known, holding a coffee pot like it was a shield between us. "Sit down, Rebecca," Roman said quietly, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I don't know what you mean," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Sarah." The laugh that escaped him was completely devoid of humor. "Sarah Mitchell, age 26, employed here for 8 months, living at 417 Cedar Street, apartment 2B. I know exactly who you're pretending to be. The question is why?" My blood turned to ice. He knew where I lived. How long had he known? How long had I been living under the illusion of safety, while he was perfectly aware of my location? "Sit down," he repeated. And this time it wasn't a request. My legs felt weak as I sank into the chair, still clutching the coffee pot. Roman leaned back, studying me with the intensity of a predator sizing up prey. He looked older than I remembered, lines around his eyes that spoke of stress and sleepless nights. But he was still devastatingly handsome, still possessed that magnetic presence that had drawn me in, despite every rational thought telling me to run. 2 years, he said finally. 2 years I mourned you. 2 years I hunted the men responsible for your death. Do you have any idea what I've done in your name, Rebecca? The weight of his words hit me like a physical blow. I thought of the news reports I'd seen, the mysterious deaths and disappearances in the criminal underworld that had accelerated after my supposed accident. Roman's vengeance, carried out while I was hiding in plain sight. "Roman, I can explain. Can you?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Can you explain why you let me believe you were dead? Can you explain why you're working in a hospital cafeteria instead of buried in Greenwood Cemetery where I left flowers every week for a year?" Tears stung my eyes, but I fought them back. I couldn't afford to break down now. Couldn't afford to show him how deeply his words affected me. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, cara mia. The pet name he'd once whispered against my skin now sounded like a threat. You chose to disappear. You chose to let me believe you were gone. You chose to hide instead of trusting me to protect you. Protect me? The words came out harsher than I intended. Like you protected me from the Bratva. Like you protected me when they put a target on my back because I'd seen too much. Something flickered across his face, a shadow of the pain I remembered from our last night together. I would have found another way. There was no other way, and you know it. I set the coffee pot down with shaking hands. The FBI made sure of that. The FBI. He said it like a curse. Of course. They staged your death, gave you a new identity. Very thorough. I'll give them credit for that. The casual way he'd pieced it together terrified me. Roman had always been smart, but this was something else. This was the calculating intelligence of a man who'd built an empire on reading people, on seeing through deceptions. How long have you known? I asked. That you were alive? 3 days? That you were here, in my city, working in my hospital? Since this morning. His hospital, of course. I should have known that Roman's legitimate businesses would extend to healthcare. He'd always been careful to diversify, to have fingers in as many pies as possible. You bought St. Mary's. 6 months ago. I've been expanding my legitimate interests, cleaning up the family business. Ironic, isn't it? That you ended up working for me without even knowing it. The pieces fell into place with horrifying clarity. My job, this position, the easy way I'd been hired despite my limited experience. It hadn't been luck or desperation on the hospital's part. It had been Roman, orchestrating events even before he knew I was alive. You planned this. No, cara mia. This is simply fate having a sense of humor. He stood and moved to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. Though I admit, once I realized you were here, I made certain adjustments to ensure this meeting. What do you want, Roman? He turned back to me, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. There was hunger there, and anger, and something that looked dangerously like love, but twisted, sharpened by 2 years of grief and rage. What do I want? He moved closer, each step deliberate. I want to know why the woman I loved chose to break my heart instead of trusting me. I want to know what was so terrible about the life I could have given you that you preferred to disappear entirely. Oh, he was close enough now that I could smell his cologne. The same sandalwood and spice that had clung to his skin when he held me. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could count the barely visible scars on his hands from years of violence. I want, he said, his voice dropping to barely a whisper, to understand why you're wearing a wedding ring when Rebecca Carter died unmarried. My hand flew instinctively to the simple gold band I'd bought at a pawn shop, the prop that helped maintain my new identity. It's not real, isn't it? His gaze dropped to my left hand, then traveled slowly up my arm, over my shoulder, to settle on my face. Just like Sarah Mitchell isn't real. Just like your death wasn't real. Tell me, cara mia, what else about you is an illusion? Before I could answer, before I could think of a response that wouldn't damn me further, Roman's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. We're not finished, he said, stepping back. Not even close. But it seems our reunion will have to be continued elsewhere. I'm not going anywhere with you. You misunderstand. His smile was sharp, predatory. This isn't a request. You disappeared from my life once, Rebecca. You won't do it again. He moved to the door, then paused. Oh, and cara mia? You can stop pretending you're not pregnant. I've been watching you for 3 days. I notice everything. The door closed behind him with a soft click. leaving me alone with the wreckage of my carefully constructed new life and the terrifying realization that Roman Moretti now knew every secret I'd been desperately trying to hide. The rest of my shift passed in a haze of terror and desperate planning. Every time someone entered the cafeteria, I expected to see Roman's men. Every phone call Margaret received made my heart race. Every unfamiliar face in scrubs made me wonder if they were really medical staff or something far more dangerous. Roman's words echoed in my mind like a death sentence. He'd been watching me for 3 days. 3 days during which I'd walked to work, gone grocery shopping, lived my life in the naive belief that I was safe. The thought of his eyes on me, tracking my movements, learning my routines, made my skin crawl. By the time 6 o'clock arrived, I was a bundle of raw nerves. Margaret barely glanced up as I signed out, her attention focused on the schedule for tomorrow. If only she knew that by tomorrow, Sarah Mitchell might have disappeared as completely as Rebecca Carter had 2 years ago. The walk home felt different now. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every parked car might contain watchers. The route I'd taken dozens of times before seemed suddenly full of blind corners and potential ambush points. I found myself looking over my shoulder every few steps, my hand instinctively moving to protect my stomach. My apartment building was a rundown 3-story structure that had seen better days decades ago. The lock on the front door had been broken for months. The hallways smelled of cooking grease and despair, and my neighbors kept to themselves in the way that people did when they were all hiding from something. I climbed the stairs to the second floor, my keys already in hand, when I noticed that my door was slightly ajar. My blood turned to ice. I always locked my door. Always. In my world, carelessness meant death. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, go back down the stairs, disappear into the night. But where could I go? If Roman had found me here, if he'd found my apartment, then he'd already demonstrated that nowhere was safe. I pushed the door open slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. Roman sat in my one decent chair, completely at ease, as if he owned the place. Which, given his resources, he probably could have by morning. He'd changed from his business suit into dark jeans and a black sweater that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. More casual, but somehow more dangerous. "Hello, cara mia. We need to talk." "Get out." The words came out steadier than I felt. "You have no right to be here." "I have every right." He stood, and in the cramped confines of my studio apartment, he seemed even larger, more imposing. "You're carrying my child." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd known this moment would come eventually, had practiced what I might say, but now that it was here, I found myself speechless. "Nothing to say?" He moved closer, and I backed against the door. "I told you I notice everything, Rebecca. The way you touch your stomach when you think no one is looking. The loose clothes. The fact that you've been working in a hospital cafeteria for 8 months, which puts the timing right around when we were together. You don't know anything. Don't I?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a manila folder. "Medical records from Dr. Patricia Williams, OB-GYN. Prenatal vitamins charged to a credit card under the name Sarah Mitchell. Should I continue?" My legs felt weak. He'd done more than watch me. He'd invaded every aspect of my new life, peeled back the layers of my identity like an onion. "How did you get access to confidential medical records? Rebecca, cara mia, you're talking to a man who owns judges, police commissioners, and half the politicians in this city. A small-town gynecologist's files were hardly a challenge." The casual way he said it reminded me of exactly who I was dealing with. Roman Moretti wasn't just wealthy or well-connected. He was the head of one of the most powerful crime families on the East Coast. When he wanted something, obstacles simply ceased to exist. "The question isn't how I found out," he continued, setting the folder on my tiny kitchen counter. "The question is why you thought you could hide my child from me. Because I knew this would happen. I gestured between us, my voice rising. I knew you'd find out somehow, and I knew you'd think you owned us both. Own you? His laugh was bitter. Rebecca, I worshipped you. I would have given you anything, protected you from everything. Instead, you chose to fake your death and raise my child in poverty. I chose safety over luxury. I chose protection over possession. Protection? His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You call this protection? Living in a slum, working a job that barely pays for groceries, no health insurance, no security? What happens when the baby comes? What happens if there are complications? His words hit every fear I'd been trying not to think about. The bills were already piling up from the prenatal visits I could barely afford. I'd been putting off necessary tests because they cost too much. My apartment had no security system, no safe room, nothing to protect us if our past came looking. That's my choice to make. Not anymore. He moved to the window, peering through the blinds at the street below. Tell me, Rebecca, how long do you think it will take the Bratva to put the pieces together? I found you in 3 days. How long before they realized that Rebecca Carter didn't really die in that car accident? My blood turned to ice. I'd been so focused on hiding from Roman that I'd almost forgotten about the real threat, the reason I'd agreed to witness protection in the first place. The program was compromised, I said quietly. My handler was murdered 2 months ago. Roman turned from the window, his expression shifting to something that looked almost like concern. Agent Morrison? I nodded, not surprised he knew the name. Roman made it his business to know everything that touched his world. Professional hit, he continued. Made to look like a robbery, but too clean, too efficient. Someone wanted information. You knew? I know everything that affects my family, Karamia. And whether you like it or not, you are still family. He moved closer, his voice dropping. Morrison's death wasn't random. Someone was looking for information about protected witnesses. About you. The implications hit me like a sledgehammer. If someone had tortured Agent Morrison for information, if they'd learned about Rebecca Carter's fake death, then my carefully constructed new life was worse than useless. It was a trap waiting to be sprung. How long do you think you have? Roman asked, reading my face. A week? A month? How long before they connect Sarah Mitchell to Rebecca Carter and realize that the woman who witnessed Dmitry Volkov's execution is very much alive? I sank onto my bed, the weight of the situation crushing down on me. I'd been living on borrowed time, fooling myself that I was safe when I was actually more exposed than ever. What do you want from me? I want you to be smart for once. He knelt in front of me, his hands resting on my knees. I want you to let me protect you the way I should have 2 years ago. And in return? In return, you give me what I've wanted since the day I thought I lost you. You give me you, and you give me my child. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it awakened something I'd been trying to bury for 2 years. The memory of how safe I'd felt in his arms, how protected, how cherished. Before everything had gone wrong, before the violence and fear had driven us apart. Roman! A soft knock at the door interrupted us. We both froze, listening. Another knock, more insistent this time. Sarah? It's Mrs. Chen from downstairs. There are men asking about you. Roman was on his feet instantly, moving with the fluid grace of a predator. He gestured for silence, then moved to the window. After a moment, he cursed softly in Italian. How many exits does this building have? He asked quietly. Just the front stairs and the fire escape in back. They've covered both. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. 3 men front, 2 back, professional setup. My mouth went dry. Bratva? Most likely. He finished with his phone and moved to my small closet, pulling out a jacket. Put this on. We're leaving. How? You just said... I said they covered the obvious exits. I've been in this business a long time, Cara Mia. I always have a backup plan. He moved to the window, checking something on his phone. My men are 2 minutes out. When I say move, you go to the roof access door at the end of the hall. Don't stop. Don't look back. Another knock, more urgent now. Sarah, they're asking very specific questions. I think you should call the police. Roman's smile was sharp and predatory. Too late for police, Mrs. Chen. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made us both freeze. Heavy boots, multiple sets, trying to be quiet, but failing. Roman moved to my tiny kitchen, opening drawers until he found what he was looking for. The large carving knife looked deadly in his hands. I'm not letting them take you, he said quietly. Not again. The footsteps stopped outside my door. A moment of silence, then the sound of metal against metal. Lock picks. Roman's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then at me. Now. I moved toward the door just as it burst inward. Roman was there instantly, the knife sliding between the ribs of the first man through the doorway. The second man raised a gun, but Roman was already moving, years of violence making his reactions lightning fast. I ran. The hallway stretched endlessly before me, my feet pounding on worn carpet. Behind me, I heard the sounds of struggle, of violence, of men fighting for their lives. I didn't look back. The roof access door was locked, but Roman had given me something else along with the jacket, a small device that beeped once when I held it near the lock. The door clicked open. The night air hit me like a slap, cold and sharp. The roof was flat, scattered with HVAC equipment and antenna arrays. I could hear helicopter rotors in the distance, getting closer. Roman appeared behind me, blood on his sweater, his breathing slightly elevated but controlled. This way. He led me to the edge of the building, where a rope hung down into the alley below. My men are waiting. I can't climb down that. I'm pregnant. You won't have to. He clipped a harness around my waist with practiced efficiency. Trust me. The descent was terrifying and swift. Roman controlled our speed, his arms around me as we rappelled down the side of the building. At the bottom, 2 men in dark suits waited beside a black SUV, their eyes scanning the surrounding area for threats. Situation report, Roman said, as soon as our feet touched the ground. 5 hostiles neutralized, one of the men reported. Building is secure, but police response is imminent. Then we go. Now. Roman helped me into the SUV, sliding in beside me as the vehicle pulled away from the curb with professional smoothness. I watched my apartment building disappear behind us, knowing I'd never see it again. That Sarah Mitchell had just died as completely as Rebecca Carter had 2 years before. Where are we going? I asked. Roman's smile was sharp and possessive. Home, Cara Mia, where you belong. The estate appeared through the darkness like something from a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. High stone walls topped with elegant ironwork that concealed razor wire, gates that opened silently at our approach, manicured grounds that stretched into shadows. This was Roman's fortress, the seat of his power, and now, apparently, my prison. The mansion itself was a study in understated elegance, old money aesthetic with new money security. I counted at least 6 cameras on the approach alone, and I suspected there were dozens more hidden throughout the grounds. Men in dark suits moved like shadows among the trees, barely visible but unmistakably present. Welcome home, Roman said, as the SUV pulled up to the front entrance. This isn't my home. It is now. The interior was exactly what I'd expected. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that belonged in museums. But there was warmth here too. Unexpected touches that spoke of an actual life being lived rather than just a showpiece. Family photographs, books left open on side tables, A child's drawing hung on the refrigerator in the kitchen we passed. "You have a child," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. Roman paused on the grand staircase. "Isabella is 8. My daughter with Sophia." Sophia. The name hung between us like a weapon. I'd known about her, of course. Roman's fiancée, the woman he was supposed to marry to cement an alliance between families. The woman I'd helped him forget during those stolen nights 2 years ago. Where is she now? Sophia is in Italy, visiting her family. Isabella is at boarding school in Switzerland. They're both safe, which is more than I could say about you an hour ago. He led me to a suite of rooms on the 2nd floor. Bedroom, sitting area, private bathroom that was larger than my entire apartment had been. Everything decorated in soft blues and creams, feminine without being fussy. A prison designed to be comfortable. "This was meant to be yours," Roman said quietly, watching as I took in the space. 2 years ago, before everything went wrong, I had it decorated for you. The admission caught me off guard. I moved to the window, looking out over gardens lit by subtle landscaping lights. "You were engaged to Sophia." "I was promised to Sophia. There's a difference." "Is there?" I turned to face him. "You were going to marry her, start a family with her, build a life with her. I was just the mistress, the dirty secret you kept on the side." Something dark flickered across his face. "You were never a secret, cara mia. You were the only real thing in my life." "Real enough to break up with her for me?" The silence stretched between us, and I had my answer. Even now, even after everything we'd been through, he couldn't give me what I'd needed then. Complete commitment, total honesty, a future that didn't require me to hide in shadows. "Sophia and I have an understanding," he said finally. "We always have." "How convenient for you." "Rebecca." "It's been Sarah for 2 years." I moved away from the window, putting distance between us. Sarah Mitchell, who worked double shifts to pay rent, who ate ramen noodles for dinner most nights, who was alone and scared and pregnant with your child while you were planning your wedding to another woman. "I thought you were dead." His voice was raw with something that might have been pain. "For 2 years, I thought you were dead. And if I hadn't been, if I just disappeared, would you have looked for me? Or would you have married Sophia and convinced yourself it was for the best?" He was quiet for so long, I thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know." The honesty hurt more than a lie would have. At least with a lie, I could have maintained my anger. This admission, this glimpse of vulnerability, made it harder to hold on to the righteous fury that had sustained me for 2 years. "Why did you run?" he asked suddenly. The real reason. Not the witness protection, not the bratva. Why did you choose to disappear rather than trust me to handle things? I sank into one of the chairs by the fireplace, exhaustion hitting me like a wave. Because I saw what you were willing to do for me, and it terrified me. "What do you mean?" "Dmitry Volkov. You had him killed because of what he did to me, because I witnessed that execution in the hospital parking lot. You started a war with the bratva for me. He threatened you. He put you in danger. And you responded with violence. You always respond with violence." I looked up at him, seeing the man I'd fallen in love with, and the monster he could become when provoked. "Do you know what I thought about during those nights in safe houses, waiting for the FBI to give me a new identity? I thought about what would happen to our child if we stayed together." "What do you mean?" "I thought about raising a baby in a world where daddy's business meetings end in bloodshed, where family dinners are interrupted by calls about rivals who need to be eliminated, where my child's first word might be gun, because there are always armed men around the house." Roman's face had gone very still. I would have kept you both safe. Safe from everyone but you. I stood, moving to the opposite side of the room. I saw what you became when someone threatened me, Roman. You became something ruthless and terrible, and it was beautiful and horrifying all at once. I couldn't bring a child into that world. So you chose poverty instead. You chose to struggle alone, rather than let me provide for you. I chose freedom over a golden cage. And how's that working out for you, cara mia? His voice hardened. You're here now, aren't you? Despite all your noble choices, despite your determination to stay away, you're exactly where I always knew you'd end up, with me. The possessiveness in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. This is temporary. Once the Bratva threat is eliminated, the Bratva threat will never be eliminated, not completely. He moved closer, stalking me across the room like a predator. There will always be another enemy, another rival, another threat. That's the world I live in, the world you entered when you fell in love with me. I can't live like this. You can't live without me. He was close enough now that I could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Do you think I haven't watched you these past 2 years? Do you think I haven't seen how you flinch when men approach you? How you never let anyone get close? You're carrying my child, Rebecca. But you haven't been with anyone else since you left. The words hit closer to home than I wanted to admit. There had been opportunities, men who'd shown interest, but something always held me back. The memory of Roman's hands on my skin, the way he'd made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. That doesn't mean anything, doesn't it? His hand came up to cup my face, thumb tracing along my cheekbone. Your body remembers me, cara mia. Your heart remembers. I should have pulled away, should have stepped back, maintained the distance that was the only thing protecting me from making another catastrophic mistake. Instead, I found myself leaning into his touch, my eyes drifting closed. Roman, I know you're afraid, he said softly. I know you think I'm too dangerous, too violent, too possessive, but I'm the only man who can keep you safe. I'm the only man who will love you the way you deserve. What about Sophia? Sophia and I have an arrangement. She understands the realities of our world better than you did 2 years ago. She knows that love and duty don't always align. So I'd be your mistress again, your kept woman. You'd be my everything. His other hand came up to frame my face, his gaze intense. Sophia provides respectability, political connections, the alliance our families need. But you, cara mia, you are the other half of my soul. It was the wrong thing to say, and the right thing simultaneously. Wrong, because it confirmed that he still wouldn't choose me over duty, still wouldn't make me his official priority. Right, because it was honest, because it acknowledged what we both knew, but had never spoken aloud. I can't be your secret again. Then don't be. He leaned closer, his forehead touching mine. Be my partner. Help me build something better than what came before. Help me create a world where our child can grow up safe and loved. How? Stay with me. Let me take care of you both. In return, you help me legitimize more of the business. You use your medical background to help with the hospital acquisitions, the pharmaceutical investments. You become part of the solution instead of running from the problem. It was seductive, this vision he was painting. A world where I could use my skills for something meaningful, where I could be part of building something better instead of just surviving day to day. But it was also a trap. Elegant and beautiful and lined with silk, but a trap nonetheless. And if I say no? His hands dropped away from my face, the warmth disappearing with his touch. You're carrying my child, Rebecca. You'll always be part of my world now, whether you choose to be or not. The only question is whether you'll be an active participant or a protected asset. The threat was velvet-wrapped but unmistakable. I could choose to work with him, or I could choose to work with him. Or I could be kept safely locked away while he made all the decisions for both of us. You're giving me an ultimatum. I'm giving you a choice, more of a choice than you gave me 2 years ago when you disappeared without a word. A soft knock at the door interrupted us. Roman called out permission to enter, and a woman in her 50s appeared. Elegant, well-dressed, with the kind of poise that spoke of years managing a household full of dangerous men. Mr. Moretti, Dr. Castellano has arrived for the evening consultation. Thank you, Maria. Please show him to my study. I'll be down shortly. The woman nodded and withdrew, but not before giving me a curious look. I wondered how many women had been brought to this room over the years, how many had been given the same impossible choice I was facing now. A doctor? For you? And the baby? Roman's voice softened slightly. You've been without proper prenatal care for too long. Dr. Castellano is the finest obstetrician in the city, completely discreet, and already on my payroll. Despite everything, I felt a surge of relief. The fear about my pregnancy, about affording proper medical care, had been a constant weight on my shoulders. You thought of everything. I told you, cara mia. I notice everything. He moved toward the door. Think about what I've offered while he examines you. But know this, you're not leaving this house until I'm satisfied you're both safe. And when will that be? His smile was sharp and predatory. When the bratva is no longer a threat. When every man who might hurt you is in the ground. When I'm certain that no one will ever again make the mistake of thinking they can take what's mine. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone with the weight of his words and the impossible choice before me. Through the window, I could see guards moving through the shadows, could see the lights of the city beyond the estate walls. So close, and yet impossibly far away. I moved to the dresser, where someone had already unpacked clothes that fit perfectly, everything I might need, as if Roman had been planning this reunion for months rather than days. When I opened the jewelry box on the vanity, I found the necklace he'd given me 2 years ago, the one I'd left behind when I'd fled. A simple gold chain with a small diamond pendant, worth more than I'd made in my entire time as Sarah Mitchell. He'd kept it. Through 2 years of believing I was dead, through an engagement to another woman, through God knew what kind of violence and grief, he'd kept a piece of me. My reflection in the mirror looked pale and uncertain. The woman staring back at me wasn't Rebecca Carter, the naive nurse who'd fallen for a dangerous man. She wasn't Sarah Mitchell either, the woman who'd learned to survive on her own. She was something new, something caught between two worlds, carrying a child that belonged to both, and neither. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Miss, I'm Dr. Castellano. Mr. Moretti asked me to examine you. Dr. Castellano was exactly what I'd expected from one of Roman's associates. Professional, discreet, and expensive. He conducted the examination with thorough efficiency, asking questions about my medical history, my prenatal care, my general health. The baby appears healthy, he said finally, packing away his equipment. Though you're underweight and your blood pressure is elevated. Stress, most likely. Is that dangerous? It can be if it continues. You need rest, proper nutrition, and a calm environment. He handed me a business card. My number. Call if you have any concerns, any time of day or night. After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the ultrasound photos he'd given me. My baby, Roman's baby, growing inside me despite everything that had happened. In the grainy black and white images, I could make out tiny hands, the curve of a spine, the flicker of a heartbeat. This child would be born into a world of violence and luxury, protection and danger. They would never want for anything material, but they would grow up knowing that their father was capable of terrible things in the name of love and family, just like Isabella, Roman's daughter with Sophia. A little girl I'd never met, but who would be my child's half-sister. Another complication in an already impossible situation. The door opened again, and Roman returned. He'd changed clothes, trading his blood-stained sweater for a fresh shirt and tie. Business attire for whatever he'd needed to handle after our dramatic escape. Dr. Castellano says you're both healthy. Both? I looked up from the ultrasound photos. You already know the sex? A girl. His voice was soft, almost reverent. We're having a daughter. The way he said we made my chest tight, as if we were a real couple planning a family together, as if the circumstances of our reunion hadn't involved violence and coercion. Roman, I can't. You can. He sat beside me on the bed, careful not to touch but close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body. You're stronger than you know, cara mia. You survived 2 years on your own, protected our child, built a new life from nothing. You can do this. Do what, exactly? Be your kept woman while you marry someone else? Raise our daughter to accept that daddy has 2 families? Isabella knows about you. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Not everything. But she knows that Daddy loved someone very much who went away, and that he's been sad ever since. She's been asking when you're coming home. My heart clenched. Roman, you can't have told an 8-year-old. Children understand more than we give them credit for. Isabella knows that families are complicated, that sometimes the people we love can't always be together the way we want them to be. That's not fair to her, or to our daughter. What's not fair is denying them the chance to know each other. What's not fair is depriving our daughter of her father because you're afraid of the life I can give her. He reached over and took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. I'm not asking you to forget the past 2 years, Rebecca. I'm not asking you to pretend that this is simple or easy. I'm asking you to trust me enough to try. The sincerity in his voice was almost harder to resist than his threats had been. This was the Roman I'd fallen in love with. The one who could be gentle and vulnerable beneath all that power and control. What happens to Sophia? Sophia gets what she's always wanted. Security, status, a position of respect in the family. The marriage will be practical. We both understand what it is. And me? You get what I've always wanted to give you. My heart, my protection. A life where you never have to worry about anything except being happy. It sounded like a fairy tale, beautiful and impossible. But fairy tales didn't account for rival crime families, for the reality of living with a man whose business dealings required violence, for the complexity of loving someone who could never truly belong to you alone. I need time to think. Of course. He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to my knuckles. But not too much time, cara mia. The Bratva won't wait for you to make up your mind, and neither will I. He stood and moved toward the door, then paused. There's one more thing you should know. The reward I put out for information about your death. $10 million. It's still active, and now that word is spreading that you're alive. Every bounty hunter and mercenary on the East Coast will be looking for you. My blood ran cold. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand that there's no going back to the life you had as Sarah Mitchell. Whether you choose to stay with me or not, you'll need protection. The question is whether you trust me to provide it, or if you'd prefer to take your chances with the FBI again. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone with the impossible weight of my decision and the growing realization that Roman was right about one thing. There was no going back. Sarah Mitchell was dead. Rebecca Carter was supposed to be dead. And the woman I was now existed in a liminal space between life and death, safety and danger, love and fear. I placed my hand on my stomach, feeling the slight curve where our daughter was growing. Whatever choice I made would affect her too, would determine the kind of life she'd have, the kind of woman she'd become. Outside the window, Rome's city glittered in the darkness, beautiful and dangerous, full of promise and threat. Somewhere out there, men were hunting for me, driven by the bounty on my head. Somewhere out there, the Bratva was planning their next move, and somewhere in this house, Roman was planning our future, with or without my consent. I was trapped between worlds, between choices, between the man I'd loved and the life I'd built without him. And time was running out to decide which one I could live with. I woke to the sound of rain against the windows and the unfamiliar luxury of silk sheets against my skin. For a moment, I forgot where I was, reaching instinctively for the alarm clock that should have been beside my bed in the cramped studio apartment. Instead, my hand found expensive mahogany and the stark realization that Sarah Mitchell's life was truly over. The clothes that had appeared in the closet overnight fit perfectly. Another reminder of how thoroughly Roman had planned for this eventuality. Designer maternity wear in soft cashmeres and fine cottons, nothing like the second-hand uniforms and cheap jeans I'd grown accustomed to. I chose simple black slacks and a cream sweater, armor of respectability for whatever came next. The house was different in daylight, less imposing, more lived in. I could hear sounds from the kitchen as I made my way downstairs, the comfortable bustle of a household beginning its day. Maria, the woman who'd interrupted us the night before, looked up from arranging fresh flowers as I appeared in the doorway. "Good morning, Miss Rebecca. Mr. Moretti asked me to let you know he's in his study when you're ready. Coffee? Tea? I have fresh pastries from the bakery in town." The normalcy of it was almost surreal, as if I were a houseguest rather than a captive, as if this were a social visit rather than the complete upheaval of my carefully constructed life. "Coffee would be perfect. Thank you." The kitchen was warm and inviting, all granite countertops and copper pots, windows overlooking the gardens. I could imagine Roman here in the mornings, reading newspapers and making phone calls, the domestic version of a man I'd only known in shadows and stolen moments. "How long have you worked for Mr. Moretti?" I asked as Maria prepared the coffee. 15 years, she said without hesitation. Since Isabella was born. Before that, I worked for his father. You've seen a lot of changes. The family business has evolved. Mr. Moretti has worked very hard to modernize things, to build something better for the next generation. Her eyes met mine meaningfully. Children change everything, don't they? The implication was clear. Maria knew about my pregnancy, knew about the choice I was facing. I wondered how many family crises she'd witnessed over the years, how many impossible decisions had been made at this very kitchen table. "The study is through the main hall, second door on the left," she said, handing me a cup of perfectly prepared coffee. "He's been waiting for you." Roman's study was exactly what I'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, antique desk, expensive artwork. But there were personal touches, too. Photos of Isabella at various ages, a child's drawing framed on the wall, fresh flowers in a crystal vase. The contrast between the professional and personal sides of his life was stark and somehow heartbreaking. He was on the phone when I entered, speaking rapid Italian with someone who was clearly reporting bad news. His expression was cold, controlled, the face of a man used to making life-and-death decisions before breakfast. When he saw me, though, something softened in his eyes. "Ben, handle it," he said into the phone, then hung up. "Good morning, cara mia. How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," I admitted, settling into the chair across from his desk. "The bed is incredibly comfortable. Everything in that room was chosen for you. I wanted you to be comfortable when you came home." The casual possessiveness in his voice should have annoyed me. Instead, I found it oddly comforting. After 2 years of uncertainty, of living day to day without any sense of security, There was something seductive about being claimed so completely. Was that call about the bratva? His expression darkened. They've escalated. 3 of my legitimate businesses were hit last night. Warehouses, not operations that could be easily replaced. They're trying to draw me out, make me respond with violence so they can justify a full-scale war. Will you? Not the way they expect. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. I told you I've been working to legitimize the family business. That includes finding new ways to handle old problems. What does that mean? It means I've spent 2 years building relationships with law enforcement, with federal prosecutors, with people who can make the Bratva's problems much worse than anything I could do with bullets and bombs. The implications were staggering. Roman wasn't just changing his methods. He was changing the entire nature of how he wielded power. Instead of violence, he was using the system itself as a weapon. You're going legal. I'm going legitimate. There's a difference. He stood and moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Legal suggests I'm following someone else's rules. Legitimate means I'm powerful enough to operate within the system while still getting what I want. And what do you want? Everything. Cara mia. I want my daughter to be able to tell her friends what her father does for a living. I want to build something that will last generations, something that can't be destroyed by a rival's ambition or a prosecutor's investigation. He turned back to me, his expression intense. I want to be the kind of man you can be proud to love. The words hit me like a physical blow. All my arguments about his violence, his dangerous lifestyle, his inability to change. He'd been working to address every single concern I'd voiced 2 years ago. You did this because of me. I did this because of us, because I realized that the life I was living wasn't sustainable, wasn't something I could ask you to share. He moved closer, his voice dropping. I love you, Rebecca. I've loved you since the moment you stitched up that knife wound in the emergency room and looked at me like I was just another patient who needed help. I remembered that night with crystal clarity. Roman had been brought in with a stab wound, surrounded by men in expensive suits, who'd made it clear that discretion was expected. I'd treated him professionally, efficiently, but something about his eyes had stayed with me. The intelligence, the pain, the unexpected gentleness when he'd thanked me. You never told me how you really got that wound. Defending a woman who was being attacked by her ex-husband. Not very romantic, was it? Not the kind of story that fits with your image of me as a monster. You're not a monster, Roman. That's what made loving you so complicated. And now? I looked around the study, taking in the evidence of the life he'd built, the changes he'd made. Now I don't know what to think. A soft knock interrupted us. Maria appeared in the doorway, her expression apologetic. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a call for Miss Rebecca. A woman claiming to be her sister. My blood turned to ice. I didn't have a sister. Rebecca Carter had been an only child, and Sarah Mitchell's fictional family consisted of dead parents and no siblings. If someone was claiming to be my sister, it meant they knew enough about my real identity to be dangerous. Roman was already moving, his phone in his hand. Transfer the call to my secure line. And Maria, alert security, full protocols. The phone rang once before Roman answered it. This is Moretti. Mr. Moretti, a woman's voice said, clear enough for me to hear. I believe you have something that belongs to me. My sister, Rebecca Carter. I'm afraid you're mistaken. Rebecca Carter died 2 years ago in a car accident. Did she? Because I have a very interesting file here that suggests otherwise. Medical records, employment history, even some lovely surveillance photos from the past few days. Roman's expression had gone deadly calm. What do you want? A trade, Rebecca, for the information I have about who compromised the witness protection program. You see, Mr. Moretti, we both have something the other wants. We? The people who killed Agent Morrison. The people who've been hunting Rebecca for the past 2 months. The people who are about to make her life very, very complicated. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just about the Bratva anymore. This was something bigger, more dangerous. "I'll call you back," Roman said, ending the call abruptly. Who was that? Someone who knows too much. He was already moving toward a wall safe hidden behind a painting. Someone who's been playing a longer game than any of us realized. The safe opened to reveal not just money and documents, but weapons. Serious weapons. The kind that suggested this house was more fortress than home. "Roman, what's happening?" "What's happening is that your witness protection wasn't compromised by accident. Someone has been systematically eliminating protected witnesses, collecting information, building leverage." He handed me a bulletproof vest, his movements efficient and practiced. "And now they want to trade you for something bigger." What could be bigger than my life? The identity of every protected witness currently in the program. Names, locations, new identities. Hundreds of people who testified against organized crime, cartels, terrorist organizations. His eyes met mine. "You're not just one person anymore, cara mia. You're the key to destroying the entire system." The weight of the situation crashed down on me. I wasn't just running from the Bratva or hiding from Roman. I was being hunted by people who saw me as a commodity, a trading card in a game much larger than my own survival. What do we do? We? His smile was sharp and predatory. We remind these people why it's dangerous to threaten my family. He moved to his desk, pulling out a secure phone and dialing rapidly. "This is Moretti. I need a full tactical team at the estate within the hour. And contact Agent Harrison at the FBI. Tell him I'm ready to make that deal we discussed." "You're working with the FBI?" "I told you I was building new relationships. Agent Harrison has been investigating the witness protection leaks. He's been waiting for someone like you to surface, someone with enough value to draw the hunters into the open. You're using me as bait." "I'm using us as bait." He checked the weapon he'd taken from the safe, his movements professional and deadly. "But this time, cara mia, we control the trap." The sound of vehicles approaching made us both freeze. Roman moved to the window, then cursed softly. "They're early, and they didn't come alone." Through the window, I could see black SUVs approaching the gates, moving with the kind of coordination that spoke of military training. Too many vehicles, too many men, for this to be a simple pickup. "How many?" I asked. 8 vehicles, approximately 30 men, professional setup. He handed me a small device that looked like a panic button. "If anything happens to me, press this. It will alert my security team and the FBI simultaneously. Nothing's going to happen to you. Rebecca." He cupped my face in his hands, his expression serious. "I need you to promise me something. If this goes bad, if they get past my security, don't try to be a hero. Think about our daughter. Stay alive for her. Roman, promise me. I promise." He kissed me then, hard and desperate, tasting of coffee and desperation and 2 years of missed opportunities. When he pulled away, his eyes were dark with emotions I couldn't name. "Whatever happens next, remember that I love you, that I've always loved you, that everything I've done, every choice I've made since you disappeared, has been about building a world where we could be together." The sound of gunfire erupted from somewhere on the grounds. Roman's expression shifted instantly, becoming cold and focused. The man I'd known, the gentle lover, disappeared behind the mask of someone who'd survived decades in the deadliest business in the world. "Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone but me." "What if you don't come back?" "Then Agent Harrison will be here in 20 minutes to take you into federal custody. You'll be safe, our daughter will be safe, and eventually this will all be over. And you?" His smile was sharp and sad. "Then I'll have kept my promise to protect you, cara mia. even if I couldn't keep my promise to love you forever. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone with the sound of gunfire and the terrible realization that I was about to lose him again, just when I'd started to believe we might have a future together. The gunfire lasted exactly 7 minutes. I know because I counted every second, crouched behind Roman's massive desk with my hand pressed against my stomach, trying to protect our daughter from violence she couldn't even comprehend yet. When the silence fell, it was somehow worse than the chaos that had preceded it. I waited. Roman had told me not to open the door for anyone but him, but as minutes ticked by without any sign of life, I began to wonder if that moment would ever come. The panic button he'd given me felt heavy in my palm, a lifeline to safety that would mean abandoning him to whatever fate awaited outside these walls. When the door finally opened, I nearly pressed the button anyway. Roman stood in the doorway, but he wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, professional and armed, their eyes scanning the room with practiced efficiency. Roman himself looked untouched by whatever violence had occurred outside, his clothes pristine, his expression calm. "It's over," he said simply. "The attackers? Neutralized, all of them." He moved to his desk, pulling out fresh phones and documents. "But we have a problem. They weren't working alone, and their employers know exactly where you are now. How bad is it?" "Bad enough that we need to leave, tonight." He handed me a passport, and my breath caught when I saw the name. Mrs. Rebecca Moretti, complete with an official marriage certificate dated 6 months ago. "Roman, what is this?" "Insurance." His expression was grim. "If you're my wife, you're under the protection of the family. You can't be compelled to testify against me, and any attack on you is an attack on the Moretti organization itself." I stared at the documents, the weight of what he was proposing hitting me like a physical blow. "This is fake. The paperwork is real, filed with the proper authorities, witnessed by appropriate officials, completely legal and binding." He moved closer, his voice dropping. "I'm not asking you to feel married to me, cara mia. I'm asking you to let me protect you the only way I can. By making me your wife without my consent? By giving you legal protection while we figure out what comes next." He gestured toward the window, where I could see vehicles arriving. "Agent Harrison is here. We need to present a united front." Agent Harrison was exactly what I'd expected from a federal investigator. Mid-40s, graying temples, eyes that missed nothing. He entered the study with the confidence of someone who knew he held most of the cards in whatever game was being played. "Mrs. Moretti," he said, the title rolling off his tongue with subtle emphasis. "I understand congratulations are in order." "Agent Harrison," Roman replied before I could protest the assumption. "I trust your teams found everything they needed in the wreckage outside." "More than enough. Professional killers, military-grade weapons, and very interesting communications equipment." Harrison settled into a chair, his attention fixed on me. "Mrs. Carter, excuse me, Mrs. Moretti, you've been at the center of a very complex investigation." "I didn't ask to be." "No, but you witnessed something that started a chain reaction we're still trying to understand." He pulled out a tablet, showing me photos of men I didn't recognize. "These are the people who've been hunting you. Not just Bratva soldiers, but professional contractors. Ex-military, ex-intelligence, the kind of people who don't usually work for organized crime." "What does that mean?" "It means someone with serious resources and government connections has been systematically compromising witness protection for at least 2 years. We think they're selling the information to the highest bidder." Roman leaned forward. "And Rebecca is the key to identifying them. Rebecca is the one witness who survived long enough to become a problem for them. Every other protected witness from the same time period is dead, missing, or has had their cover blown in ways that led to their deaths." The implications were staggering. I wasn't just running from the consequences of witnessing a crime. I was running from a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of law enforcement. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Your cooperation in a controlled operation. We're going to let word leak that you're still alive, still in witness protection. When they come for you again, we'll be ready." "You want to use her as bait," Roman said, his voice dangerous. "I want to end this before more people die. Mrs. Moretti will be completely protected, completely safe, but we need her visible, accessible, to draw them out." "No." Roman's voice was flat, final. "Find another way." "There is no other way. She's the only witness they haven't been able to eliminate. If we don't stop them now, they'll keep hunting her until they succeed." I looked between the two men, seeing the future stretched out before me in stark terms. Either I helped the FBI end this, or I spent the rest of my life running, hiding, looking over my shoulder. Either I risked everything now, or I condemned my daughter to a life of fear and uncertainty. "I'll do it," I said quietly. "Rebecca," Roman started. "No." I stood, my hand moving instinctively to my stomach. "I won't raise my daughter in hiding. I won't spend the rest of my life being afraid of shadows. If this is the only way to end it, then this is what we do." Agent Harrison nodded approvingly. "The operation will take place in 3 days. A controlled environment, maximum security, but visible enough to draw them out." "What kind of controlled environment?" Roman asked. "A hospital, St. Catherine's Medical Center. Mrs. Moretti will be admitted for routine prenatal care, highly publicized, maximum visibility. When they come for her, we'll be ready." Roman's expression had gone deadly cold. "You want to put her in a hospital, surrounded by innocent people, while armed killers hunt her down. We want to put her in a fortress disguised as a hospital, with federal agents posing as medical staff, and every entrance monitored by tactical teams." Harrison's voice was patient, professional. "It's the safest possible environment for this kind of operation. Safe for everyone except my wife and child." The possessiveness in Roman's voice when he said wife sent an unexpected thrill through me. Even though the marriage was just paperwork, just protection, hearing him claim me so completely felt like coming home. "What guarantees do we have?" I asked. "You'll have federal protection around the clock. Mr. Moretti will have access to you at all times, and we'll have enough firepower in place to handle anything they can throw at us. And after, when this is over?" Harrison and Roman exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. "That depends on what we find, what kind of conspiracy we're dealing with. You may need to remain in protection for some time." "How long?" "Could be months. Could be years." The weight of the decision pressed down on me. Years more of hiding, of being someone else, of never feeling truly safe. Or risk everything now for the chance at a real life, a future where my daughter could grow up knowing who she was. "I need to think about it." "Mrs. Moretti," Harrison said, standing. "I understand this is difficult, but every day we wait, they get closer to finding you on their own terms. This operation gives us control, gives us the advantage." After he left, Roman and I sat in silence for long minutes. The house felt different now, less like a sanctuary and more like a temporary shelter. Outside, I could see workers cleaning up the aftermath of the attack, evidence of just how close danger had come. "Tell me about Isabella," I said finally. Roman's expression softened. "She's brilliant, stubborn like her father, but with her mother's diplomatic skills. She wants to be a doctor when she grows up. Like me. Like you." He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him since this nightmare began. "She's been asking when she can meet you, when you're coming home." "What did you tell her?" "That sometimes grown-ups have to solve complicated problems before they can be together the way they want to be." I thought about my daughter, growing inside me, and what kind of world I wanted her to be born into. A world where her father had to choose between legitimate business and criminal empire. A world where her mother had to choose between safety and freedom. Roman, if I do this, if I help them end this conspiracy, what happens to us? What do you want to happen? It was the question I'd been avoiding, the choice I hadn't been willing to make. I want to be a family, all of us. You, me, Isabella, our daughter. I want to wake up in the morning without wondering if someone's watching the house. I want to take our children to school without looking over my shoulder. Then we make that happen. He moved closer, taking my hands in his. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we build that life. Even if it means giving up parts of your business? Even if it means walking away from the family empire? Rebecca, I've spent 2 years building something I could be proud to pass on to my children. Something that won't require them to choose between love and loyalty, between family and conscience. His thumb traced across my wedding ring, the one that had appeared on my finger with the legal documents. I chose you 2 years ago. I chose our future. Everything else is just details. The sincerity in his voice, the absolute conviction, made my chest tight with emotions I'd been suppressing for too long. This was the man I'd fallen in love with, the one who could be gentle and vulnerable beneath all that power and control. Then we do this together? Together. He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to my palm. But Cara Mia, if anything goes wrong, if the operation falls apart, you press that panic button and you run. Don't look back. Don't try to save me. Just survive. Nothing's going to go wrong. Promise me anyway. I looked into his eyes, seeing the fear he was trying so hard to hide. Fear for me, for our daughter, for the future we'd only just begun to imagine. I promise. Outside, the sun was setting over the estate, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. In 3 days, this would all be over, one way or another. Either we'd be free to build the life we wanted, or we'd be back to running, hiding, surviving day by day. But for tonight, we were together. For tonight, we were safe. And for tonight, that was enough. The morning of the operation dawned gray and cold, October rain streaking the windows of St. Catherine's Medical Center. I sat in the hospital bed, wearing the simple gown they'd given me, watching Roman pace like a caged predator across the room. 3 days of preparation had led to this moment, and now that it was here, the weight of what we were attempting felt almost unbearable. "The tactical teams are in position," Agent Harrison said, checking his watch for the 10th time in as many minutes. "Medical staff has been replaced with federal agents. Every entrance is monitored, every floor secured." "And if they don't take the bait?" Roman asked. "They will. The leak about Mrs. Moretti's admission was too specific, too detailed to ignore. If they want her, this is their best chance." Roman stopped pacing and moved to my bedside, his hand finding mine. "How are you feeling, Cara Mia?" "Terrified," I admitted, "but ready for this to be over." The past 3 days had been a strange kind of honeymoon. Roman and I had talked more honestly than we ever had before, about our fears, our hopes, our plans for the future. I'd spoken with Isabella on video calls, getting to know the little girl who would soon be my stepdaughter. We'd made tentative plans for after this was over, dreams of a life where we could all be together without secrets or fear. But first, we had to survive the next few hours. Dr. Castellano entered the room, his familiar presence a comfort in the midst of all the federal agents and tactical preparations. "Time for your examination, Mrs. Moretti." The ultrasound showed our daughter growing strong and healthy, her heartbeat steady and sure. Watching the screen, seeing this tiny life we'd created together, made the danger surrounding us feel even more surreal. "She's perfect," Roman said softly, his eyes fixed on the monitor. 24 weeks, Dr. Castellano confirmed. Everything looks excellent. You should both be very proud. A soft knock interrupted us. Agent Harrison appeared in the doorway, his expression tense. We have movement. 3 vehicles approaching from different directions, coordinated timing. This is it. Roman's entire demeanor shifted, becoming the cold, calculating man who'd built an empire on his ability to anticipate and counter threats. How long? 5 minutes, maybe less. Roman turned to me, his hands framing my face. Remember what we talked about. No matter what happens, you protect our daughter first. What about you? I'll be fine. I've been doing this a long time, cara mia. He kissed me then, hard and desperate, tasting of coffee and fear and absolute determination. When he pulled away, his eyes were dark with emotions I couldn't name. Ti amo, he whispered. I love you, both of you. I love you too. Agent Harrison was already moving, speaking rapidly into his radio. All units, this is Control. Targets are approaching. Remember, we want them alive if possible. We need information about who's behind this. The next few minutes stretched like hours. Roman positioned himself by the window, a handgun appearing from somewhere beneath his jacket. Agent Harrison coordinated with his teams through an earpiece, his voice calm and professional, despite the tension radiating from every line of his body. Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. In the distance, I could hear the sound of gunfire, shouts, the controlled chaos of a battle being fought throughout the hospital. They cut the power, Harrison said grimly. Professional job. They've done this before. Roman was already moving, checking the corridor outside our room. How many ways into this floor? 2 stairwells, main elevator bank, service elevator, all covered by our people. Then how? The ceiling tile above our heads crashed down, and a figure in black tactical gear dropped into the room. Roman's gun was up instantly, but the intruder was faster, a flashbang grenade rolling across the floor before any of us could react. The explosion was deafening, blinding. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard the sound of fighting, bodies hitting walls, the crack of gunfire. When my vision cleared, Roman was on the ground, blood seeping from a head wound, and Agent Harrison was nowhere to be seen. Mrs. Rebecca Moretti, a voice said from behind me. We finally meet. I turned to see a woman in her 50s, expensively dressed, with the kind of cold intelligence in her eyes that spoke of decades in the shadows. She wasn't what I'd expected from a professional killer. I'm not going anywhere with you. Oh, but you are. She gestured, and 2 more figures in tactical gear entered through the hole in the ceiling. You see, dear, you're worth far more than just the bounty on your head. You're the key to bringing down an entire network of federal protection programs. I don't know anything about other witnesses, but you will. You see, your husband has been very busy these past 2 years, building relationships, gathering intelligence, working with federal agencies to legitimize his business interests. Her smile was cold, predatory. Roman Moretti has become quite the valuable asset to law enforcement, and assets can be leveraged. The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about me, wasn't just about the witness protection leak. This was about Roman, about the empire he'd built, about the information he'd gathered while working with the FBI. What do you want? Everything he knows. Every contact, every operation, every piece of intelligence he's gathered. You're going to help us get it. I won't. You will. Because if you don't, we'll kill him right here, right now. Then we'll kill Agent Harrison. Then we'll work our way through every federal agent in this building until you decide to cooperate. Roman stirred on the floor, blood matting his dark hair. His eyes found mine, and I saw him trying to assess the situation, calculating odds and possibilities. Don't, he said quietly. Don't give them anything. How touching. The woman nodded to one of her men, who raised his weapon toward Roman's head. Last chance, Mrs. Moretti. Your husband's life for his secrets. I looked at Roman, seeing the man I'd loved for so long, the father of my children, the person who'd spent 2 years rebuilding his entire life for the chance to be with me. Then I thought about our daughter, growing inside me, and what kind of world she'd be born into if I let these people win. All right, I said. I'll cooperate. Rebecca, no, Roman started. Yes, the woman said with satisfaction. I thought you might see reason. Now we're going to walk out of here very quietly. Any trouble and your husband dies. She gestured toward the door, but before we could move, the room erupted in chaos again. The corridor outside filled with tactical agents, real ones this time, moving with military precision. Agent Harrison's voice echoed through a bullhorn. Federal agents, drop your weapons! The woman's expression shifted to rage. Take her, she snapped to her men. Kill anyone who gets in the way. One of the tactical men grabbed my arm, hauling me toward the hole in the ceiling, but Roman was moving despite his injuries. He tackled the man holding me, and we all went down in a tangle of limbs and weapons. Stay down, Roman shouted, covering me with his body as gunfire erupted around us. The fight was brief but brutal. When the smoke cleared, 2 of the attackers were dead, the 3rd in federal custody. The woman who'd orchestrated everything lay unconscious on the floor, blood seeping from a wound in her shoulder. Is it over? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Agent Harrison appeared in the doorway, his expression grim but satisfied. The network is broken. We've been tracking this operation for months, waiting for them to make a move this big. The woman you just met is Elena Vasquez, former CIA, currently running a private intelligence operation that's been selling government secrets to the highest bidder. And the witness protection leaks? Part of her business model. She's been systematically compromising federal programs, selling the information to organized crime, terrorist organizations, anyone willing to pay. He looked at Roman, who was being examined by a paramedic. Your husband's cooperation over the past 2 years provided the intelligence we needed to bring her down. Roman caught my eye, wincing as the paramedic cleaned his head wound. It's finished, Cara Mia. Really finished this time. What happens now? Now you get to live your lives, Harrison said. No more hiding, no more running. Elena's organization is finished. The Bratva threat has been neutralized, and your protection is no longer necessary. I sank into a chair, the weight of the past few days finally hitting me. We're free. You're free. Roman moved to my side despite the paramedic's protests, his arms coming around me carefully. How are you feeling? The baby? We're both fine. I looked up at him, seeing the man who'd fought for me, who'd risked everything to keep me safe. What happens next? Next, we go home. We call Isabella and tell her that her new mother is coming home. We plan a real wedding, one where you choose to marry me instead of just accepting legal protection. His smile was soft, hopeful. Next, we build the life we've been dreaming about. And your business? Completely legitimate as of 6 months ago. Real estate, hospitals, import-export, all of it clean. He touched my face gently. I told you, Cara Mia. I chose you. I chose our future. Everything else was just details. 3 months later, I stood in the garden of Roman's estate, wearing a wedding dress that cost more than I'd made in a year as Sarah Mitchell. Isabella, beautiful in her flower girl dress, scattered rose petals ahead of me as I walked down the aisle toward the man who'd turned his entire world upside down for love. The ceremony was small, intimate, attended by family and the friends we'd made in our new legitimate life. Agent Harrison was there, along with Dr. Castellano and Maria, who'd helped plan every detail. Even some of Roman's former associates attended, men who'd followed his lead in transitioning to legal businesses, Do you, Rebecca Carter, take this man to be your husband? I do, I said, meaning it more than I'd ever meant anything in my life. Do you, Roman Moretti, take this woman to be your wife? I do, he said, his voice strong and sure. For better or worse, in this life and whatever comes after. When he kissed me, when the crowd cheered, when Isabella threw her arms around both of us in a family hug, I felt the last pieces of my old life fall away. Rebecca Carter, the frightened nurse who'd witnessed a murder, was gone. Sarah Mitchell, the woman hiding in plain sight, was gone. I was Mrs. Rebecca Moretti now, wife to a man who'd given up an empire for love, mother to a stepdaughter who'd welcomed me with open arms, expecting mother to a daughter who would grow up knowing exactly who she was and where she belonged. 6 months after that, I gave birth to Sophia Moretti in the same hospital where Roman and I had been reunited. She was perfect, healthy, with her father's dark eyes and what the nurses insisted was my stubborn chin. Isabella was completely enchanted with her baby sister, already planning all the things they'd do together when Sophia was older. Roman held our daughter for the first time with tears in his eyes. This powerful man reduced to wonder by 7 pounds of new life. She's beautiful, he whispered. Just like her mother. What are you thinking about? I asked, watching his expression. I'm thinking about how different everything could have been. If I hadn't bought the hospital, if I hadn't found you, if you'd decided to keep running instead of trusting me. But I didn't run. I chose to trust you. You chose to love me. Despite everything I'd done, everything I represented, you chose love over fear. I looked around the hospital room, at the flowers from well-wishers, at the security detail discreetly positioned outside our door, at the family we'd built from the ashes of our separate pasts. It wasn't a choice, I said finally. Love never really is. It just is, and you either fight it or surrender to it. And you surrendered. We both did. Roman settled into the chair beside my bed, our daughter sleeping peacefully in his arms. Through the window, I could see the city lights, the world we'd both fought so hard to be part of. There would be challenges ahead, I knew. Raising children, building a business, creating a legacy we could all be proud of. But we'd face them together, as a family, as partners in every sense of the word. The past was finally, truly behind us. The future stretched ahead, full of possibility and promise. And in this moment, holding the hand of the man I loved while our daughter slept between us, I knew that every choice I'd made, every risk I'd taken, every moment of fear and uncertainty, had been worth it. We were home. We were safe. We were together. And that was everything.